Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This happened a few years ago while I was working as an assistant store manager for a big box automotive retail store. I was working the afternoon/evening shift as I often did. It's just a normal day, customers coming and going. Early on in my shift, the entitled customer comes into the store and picks out a set of headlights that he thinks will work for his car. I offered to check and see if they were the right ones, as I didn't want him to be inconvenienced to have to do a return later if he had picked out the wrong item. He declined and said he was in a hurry and he knew he had the right item and to stop wasting his time. I cashed him out and he went on his way. Before leaving, I informed him that our company policy was that if any electronic item were opened, that it could not be returned. About an hour later, the entitled customer comes back to the store demanding a refund that I sold him the wrong product. I again informed him of the policy and asked if he had opened the product and tried to install it on his vehicle, to which he said yes. He then made a stupid comment about, "Don't you know you have to open it to see if it works?" In no way, shape or form did I have an attitude when I told him that if he would have let me do my job and look up the part, that he wouldn't be in this situation. Apparently, this got him angry. He left the store for a few minutes, I assumed to calm down. Then came back in and told me he bought the right product at our competitor who wanted his money. I told him that I could not complete a return for him. I pointed at the return policy on the counter. He said he didn't give an F. He wanted his freaking money or there would be hell to pay. I told him he was no longer welcome at the store and he needed to leave, to which he refused. I told him that if he didn't leave, I would call the police and have him arrested for trespassing and causing a disturbance. He said, "Screw you, call them, I don't give a damn. I want my $20. Unbeknownst to me, a coworker was already on the phone with police dispatch, telling them we had an unruly customer in the store and refused to leave. The entitled customer finally realized he wasn't going to bully me into giving him the return and started to walk out while saying, "Don't let me catch your nasty self outside of here. I am going to shoot you." The coworker was telling dispatch everything that was happening. The entitled customer finally left, and a few minutes later I heard the crackling of a police radio in the distance. The coworker was telling the police officer that I was the one involved and to talk to me about the incident. Police officer came over to me, asked for and ran my credentials, also asking for the details of the incident. I told the police officer what happened and told him we have it on the security camera also. I offered to show him the incident and give him a copy as we would be pressing charges. The police officer looked at the footage of the incident and took a copy for evidence purposes. He wrote the report and had me, co-worker and a few other co-workers write statements as to what happened. The police officer asked if I knew the entitled customer's name. I told him I did and could also provide his address and phone number as it was in our computer system for warranty purposes on other items. When I told the police officer the entitled customer's name, he said, "I know who he is. He's a bad dude and not to take his threat lightly." I told him I wanted to press charges for terroristic threats, trespassing, and disorderly conduct. As per company policy, I had to write an incident report for the trespassing and the police officer showing up. I also notified the store manager and the district manager immediately after the police officer left. Towards the end of the shift, the police officer came back to the store and informed me that they arrested the entitled customer on outstanding warrants and the new charges. He told me that the district attorney would be in touch with me about testifying in court. A few months later, the district attorney called and asked for me to come to their office to have a recorded interview and to bring any witness statements that I had. I did as requested. Once the entitled customer's court date got closer and I was preparing myself to go testify, I received a call from the DA telling me that charges were dropped, that I didn't have to testify in court. I asked why the entitled customer's charges were dropped, and he told me that the entitled customer had made a plea deal that the charges from his warrants were going to put him in prison for a long time. Being curious, I asked the DA what the charges were from the entitled customer's warrant, and he told me that I cannot release that information at this time. I asked him when his court date was going to be, that I wanted to try and be there. And luckily for me, I wrote the schedule at work. So when I found out the date, I gave myself that day off. I went to court and found out that the entitled customer had been charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, felon in possession of a firearm, and all the charges that go with it, and multiple drug-related charges. He was found guilty on all charges and is currently serving life without parole. After the court case, I thought to myself that somehow I had a hand in helping catch this guy. The police officers didn't know where he was until I gave them the entitled customer's address. But to think that they got the information over a $20 return that couldn't be made? I know eventually the police officers would have caught him, most likely over something stupid like a blown headlight. Anyways, karma wins again. Back in 2005, I worked weekends delivering Chinese food for a small restaurant in my town. I was paid $8 per hour plus tips. During the winter months, we were very busy because we were the only Chinese restaurant in the area that delivered. Frequent customers of ours were from the real prestigious prep school only about 4 miles from the restaurant. These kids were from very wealthy families and rarely ever tipped me. But that's how things go, and they usually didn't order anything more than $20 worth of food. I returned to the restaurant one night and was given an order for a student at the school. The deal was that the students were to meet all delivery drivers at the cafeteria. This was arranged by the school with all the local restaurants that delivered. Anyway, I drove to the school through the snowstorm we were getting and pulled into the cafeteria parking lot. I walk inside with the food and call out the name of the customer on the receipt. No one comes over to me. At this time, I don't even have a cell phone so I can call him. I wait for 10 minutes and still he doesn't show. So I take the food and go back to the restaurant. When I get back, my boss, who speaks broken English, tells me the student called the restaurant asking where his food was. I told my boss I was waiting for him in the cafeteria for 10 minutes and he never showed. He sends me back to the school, so I drive back to the school and go back into the cafeteria. Again, he doesn't show for 15 minutes. Now I'm pissed, because this is wasting my gas. I get back in the car and drive back to the restaurant again. I told the boss he didn't show up again. We put his food aside and he's about to send me on another delivery. And the phone rings. It's him. The cashier hands me the phone. Me giving a bit of an attitude. Yeah, you placed the order? Yeah, I've been waiting for you all this time. Where? I was at the cafeteria twice and waited 10 minutes the first time and 15 the second time. You never showed. Well, come back now, I'll be there. I hang up and get back in the car. I drive back to the school again and there he is waiting for me in the parking lot. He's about 6'3" and looks like he played football for the school. I am only 5'8". And not really built but could hold my own when needed. Luckily, I didn't have to prove that this night. This for you? I ask. Yeah, 15:30. Yeah, after I got off the phone with you, I talked to your boss and he said because I had to wait so long I could have it for free. At this point, I'm fuming. 3 times driving here and he tells me this? I turn around and walk back to the car without giving him his food. Hey, what about my food? I open the door and put the food on my seat. I close the door and look at him. And at this time, I'm 25 years old. He looks like he's about 15 or 16. I know I have to keep my cool because I have no intention of going to jail for assaulting a minor. I ask him, you have a phone on you? Yeah? Call the restaurant. He pulls out his phone and calls the restaurant. I have him hand me the phone and the boss answers. Hello? Hey boss. Did you tell him he can have his food for free now? What? No. I thought so. I hang up and give him back his phone. Trying to pull a fast one on me? Trying to pull a fast one on me? You're not getting nothing. Okay, I'll pay for it then. Screw you, buddy. Don't ever call our restaurant again. We have your number and your name. You can never have another delivery from us again. I got back in the car and drove back to the restaurant. I bring his food in and the boss tells me that I could take it home if I want. I did, and my wife and I ate it. I thought this would be the end of it, but nope. The next day I got called into work early. Apparently the entitled kid decided to call his mother, saying that I refused to give him his food. I get there and the entitled kid is with his entitled mother talking to my boss. "Why didn't you give my son his food?" "Ma'am, I tried to deliver the food for your brat 2 times last night and ended up missing out on about 5 other orders because he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And then I got there the 3rd time and he tried to pull a fast one on me." "You should have just given it to him for having to wait so long. You probably take forever anyway." And here comes my anger again. Which, if he was where he was supposed to be, he would have had his food. He was trying to be slick. He might have gotten away with it with the other driver, but I don't play that nonsense. "Well, you won't be getting any more business from me, and I'm going to tell the school how rude you are." "Go ahead." The entitled mother then suddenly attacked me with her bag and started hitting me left and right while other people were trying to get her away from me. My boss called the police immediately, and after a few minutes, they got there and cuffed the entitled mother and took her in their car after investigating the situation, watching the CCTV and taking the statements from the people there. And I ended up pressing charges for assault on the entitled mother. As for the restaurant, after this incident, any student who ordered food from then on had to be at the cafeteria. If they weren't there, then they paid a fine to the school of $5, which was sent to the restaurant they ordered from. I'll start out by saying that my actions helped to precipitate the pro-revenge, but that I can't really take credit for causing everything that followed. This was 7-ish years ago in upstate New York. I had moved there for graduate school and knew no one. The first place I lived was with roommates I found on Craigslist. This was the first place I had ever rented in my life, with my name on the lease, where I was essentially responsible for myself. The roommates I had were damn shady, and the place was a wreck, but cheap at least. I made a few friends in the first couple of months, and by about November, they were talking about finding places for the following year, which is common in a lot of college towns. 3 of my friends found a place together, and so I decided to find a place with my 2 other friends. We will call them Pat and Dora. We look around a bit and end up finding a place a few houses down from our other 3 friends, and signed the lease in late November. Like lots of the housing in this area, it's a house with 2 apartments, one upstairs, us, and one downstairs. We later found out for undergrads, and a shared basement/garage. The landlord seemed pretty swell too. Included in our rent are snow removal and water. Heat, power, and internet are not. In this area especially, this is common as heat is expensive. Also, chatting with the landlord about this, he explains to us that to have separate billing for multiple unit housing, that you need to have separate meters for each unit legally. He goes on to say that for this and most properties, this is pretty easy to do for electric, but a lot harder and expensive to do for water, which is why most places, multi-unit places, include water. The school year comes and goes and we move in at the beginning of June. No problems. Toward the end of August, our landlord calls and tells us that he's selling the place. Not to worry though, our lease is still good of course, and the new guy owns some properties already. Cool, whatever. We get the new address to send the check to. The new landlord seems fine. We called in October about a power outlet not working. He got it fixed. He's good about snow removal. No real problems. Also, he's from New Zealand. Tells us he owns a dozen or so properties in the area. We barely interact with the downstairs neighbors. They are alright for undergrads, and over the course of the year, we only have a half-dozen interactions where we need to ask them to keep it down, because it's 4 AM on a Wednesday, or to ask to let someone out who's parked in. Notable is that the school we're talking about here is fairly expensive, and most of the undergrads come from backgrounds with a fair amount of money. You'd need to in order to afford this school, or take out a heap of loans. Downstairs neighbors have really nice cars, and a lot of nice stuff in the garage. Seems likely they come from money. They also let us have their beer bottles and cans to recycle, which is really nice of them, and it's like $10 to $20 a week. The school year comes and goes, we move out, and I moved out first over Memorial Day. Since I'm working in Asia for the summer and then moving out of state, I don't see the place again. But asked the roommates to clean well enough so we can get some of the deposit back. I don't figure this out until later, but it seems that every interaction with the landlord is something he stretches to the absolute limit of what he's allowed. 30 days, 2 weeks, whatever. I leave for Asia, and in early July emailed Pat and Dora about if they have received their deposits back. I gave my parents' address as forwarding. They had, and Dora sent me a scan of it. Going through, we each lost $70 for cleaning and damage, and then there was a bill for $52 for the water bill. I don't know how they left it, so I guess maybe it took $70 to clean. So it goes. I remember that water was included in the rent. I bring this up with both of them, which they remember as well. I emailed the landlord and mentioned this to him. And at this point I assume he maybe has a different setup at other properties and made an honest mistake. Accidents happen. I heard back from the landlord 2 weeks later. He asks to see a copy of the lease. Reflecting on this, I assume he thought I wouldn't have access to one since I was in Asia. I have Dora and Pat scan me the lease, mail him a copy, and email it to him. I hear back 2 weeks later and he says he will send the money. By the time I get the money, it's late August and I'm home from Asia. Yay, I get my $52 back. Talking to Dora and Pat a few weeks later, Pat had just gotten engaged and was Skyping the whole old crew. I found out neither of them had gotten their $52. At this point, I was mad. Clearly, that was not an honest mistake. The landlord assumed I did not talk to them and that they wouldn't find out. Pat and Dora are mad. I am mad. We dig out the contact information from the undergrads who lived downstairs and let them know what's up. We also let the current residents know what happened since we happen to have contact information for some of them. We write them an email and I provide copies of all of my emails with the landlord and the lease. I hear from Pat and Dora that they get their money 30 days later and that the landlord was a jerk about it. I don't think about it for a long time, even though I'm still in touch with Pat and Dora. About 2 years after this happened, I got an email from a law firm asking if I used to live at an old address and if the landlord was my landlord. I reply yes, and they asked to speak on the phone. Law firm belongs to one of the undergrad's dads. This is how he could afford expensive schooling. Through the course of the conversation, it comes out that Dad was really angry about this, that someone would try to take advantage of his son. He has the time and resources to go scorched earth on the landlord. The dad brings a case against the landlord and has his people come through all of the landlord's records, former tenants and so on. As it turned out, he's been scamming people like this for quite a while. Pertinent here also was the fact that he didn't have separate water meters. The lawyer explained to me that because of this, the landlord is facing jail time. He apparently did enough of this, and they were able to provide evidence for it. That it rose to the level of some more serious stuff like a criminal case over a civil one, I think. On top of this, I'm getting my $70 back and so are Dora and Pat as part of some settlement deal. The landlord might have to sell his properties. The kicker is that, as it turns out, the landlord's legal status could be in jeopardy because of this being a serious crime. Again, I don't really know the particulars and don't know if this lawyer was exaggerating. I really just wanted my $52 back for the water bill. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.